Hello, my friends. In today's episode, I'm speaking with former MFF trainer and tonal instructor Tim Landicho, and he's sharing all of his best tips for creating video content that really connects you with your audience. So if you're interested in making more compelling video content, this is the episode for you. Let's get started. Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. And today I'm literally giddy with excitement to have my guest on the podcast. I'm so excited to have him. It's Tim Landicho, who has been a trainer at Mark Fisher Fitness. He's currently a fitness and nutrition coach who works for Tonal, which we'll talk more about in a second. And it's his first time on the podcast. So welcome, Tim. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very, very excited to dive in.
I'm so excited. I haven't seen you in a while, though. We just ran into each other on the street of literally 2 days ago. And it was so delightful. Yeah.
Best New York City moment.
I know. That's the kind of thing you got to love about New York is if millions of people, you still randomly run into friends on the street.
Yeah.
It was a true delight.
Subway. Yeah.
Yeah. So for background, you were at MFF for how many years were you at MFF as a trainer?
Close to 4 years. So I did my trainer in residence, which is throwback to when that existed. I did that in 2017. Yep. And then I got hired full time December 2017, stayed there until until the gym reopened from the pandemic. I left in June of 2021. So close. And I started in July of 2017. So almost right at the cusp of 4 years.
Wow. I mean, it was so great having you and your energy and your experience at the clubhouse. I mean, you've definitely been missed, but since then you've been up to a lot of great shit, including starting to work for Tonal. So maybe let's just start there for people who don't know what Tonal is. Can you just say a little bit about what the heck is Tonal and, what is your role there been since you started?
Yeah, of course. I think before we dive into that, I just want to say, just as a plug to Mark Fisher Fitness, because I will always do, literally for the rest of my life, be like that place was so formative in who I am as a coach today, and literally the standards at that place. I told you this on Saturday when I saw you on the street. I was like, the standards at Mark Fisher Fitness have truly helped me just walk through door after door, getting to this position, and just have been the foundation for all the other skills I've built in this role. So huge shout out to you. Shout out to Mark Fisher Fitness.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, it means a lot. I mean, it's, MFF, we're known for being crazy, zany, wild folks, but we also are real serious about getting shit right. Right. Yeah, and being great coaches and being a really great coaching team and creating a great experience for ninjas. So we're so, grateful to have you be part of that. And I'm glad that those skills have paid off. Yeah. Aww. So what's Tonal and what are you doing there?
Yeah, so Tonal in short is a digital fitness or a connected fitness platform. And the entire experience is delivered through this unit that lives on your wall. So the way to describe it is it's this unit that's honestly, it's smaller than a flat screen TV. It's super compact. It is super aesthetically pleasing, so it fits with your living room vibe, etc. But what it does is it delivers a super unique strength training experience through what we call adaptive digital weight. So what the adaptive digital weight is, and this is where I'm hashtag physics, don't understand the nuts and bolts down to the deets here, but we use what's called electromagnetic weight in the system. And why this matters to the user is it's constantly adapting to your current strength level. So when a user creates an account, buys a Tonal, creates an account, and joins the Tonal ecosystem, it's kind of like a Netflix account. You choose your account and then open. The first thing you do is you go through a super basic strength assessment. It's very short. It walks you through a couple moves, for example, a deadlift being one of them. And then based on the read that it gets from you, which it bases on velocity, it starts to assign you weights through all the workouts you do. So that's the first thing.
Wow.
Any weights, huge barrier for someone who has never been to the gym or maybe has been to the gym but just finds weights. You literally go on this thing and you just click start on your workouts and it's automatically calibrating everything. Huge barrier that's eliminated. And on top of that, so as you get stronger, it senses that through the velocity of the cables that then reads into the unit, and it will gradually, it's always getting, it's challenging you more as you get stronger. And the last piece that I'll cover here is we have what's called, thanks to this adaptive digital weight, we have what are called dynamic weight modes. And so what that is it adds different challenges. And I know a lot of your audience is gym owners, so fitness nerds, right? So we have things that are called chains mode, eccentric mode, and smart flex. And essentially, in short, chains mode, kind of like loading up a barbell with chains, is the resistance increases as you move through the concentric portion of the rep. So great tool to use for power development, for training like acceleration, right? The flip side of that is we have eccentric mode. So the adaptive digital weight actually gets heavier as you come down through the eccentric portion of the rep. So let's say I'm going down to the bottom of the squat. It's actually getting heavier from my starting weight. So the bottom position, it's the heaviest. And then as I shoot up back up to the top.
That sounds like it sucks a lot. That sounds terrible. It sounds terrible, but amazing.
Terrible. Yeah, but then as you shoot back up to the top, the eccentric, weight increase drops off so that you can explode out of it. So great for time under tension. And then smart flex is what we in the strength training world, there's what we call a strength curve. So it's through the range of motion that you're moving at, right? Let's say I'm doing a bicep curl from the start of the rep, from the starting position to the finish position at the top. There's a point in that range of motion where it's actually the hardest to move the weight. And so at that hardest point, this is great for beginners, people who are learning form. Smart flex will ease up on the weight just enough at the hardest point so that the user can still manage it well while being challenged. And then as you move through the strength curve to your strongest point in the movement, it ramps it up again. So I think all of these are a phenomenal example of how Tonal is just using technology to honestly eliminate barriers for the average user and using it to optimize their strength training experience. So I'm in love with it. I will talk your ear off all day, but I know we don't have all day on this podcast.
That's amazing. No, I so appreciate it. I'm sure that all of our training nerd listeners out there so appreciate that like technology is really helping more people gain access to strength training and start their strength training experience. And I know a lot of people who are Tonal users who will use their system at home, and it also supplements folks who go into the gym, right? They can work out in both places. Totally. And our lives now being at home and more remote, you need options. And so the fact that there's all that technology built in is pretty amazing. And the fact that people don't even know what that technology is, they don't need to be able to explain it to use it, is pretty magical.
And I think to kind of what you and I are going to dive into today, I think that's actually what I find one of the things that I find most fun about my job is the fact that like there is all this cool stuff that I could talk your ear off. You know me, I'm verbose as hell. I could talk your ear off for like 9 hours about this, but at the end of the day, you actually don't need to know that. Obviously it's cool to know that, but at the end of the day, part of being a coach here is that I just create a fun experience for you. And I almost think of it in the most benevolent way possible, kind of Trojan horsing this like experience, kind of like indoctrinating you with solid strength training foundations, but in a way that you love and that you have a great experience with and you have fun with. And then before you know it, you're like, holy shit, I'm strong as hell. How did this happen?
Yeah, it's so smart. And in many ways, the analogy I'm thinking of is that at MFF, the way that we kind of Trojan horse ninjas is by being stupid and ridiculous and fun and wearing costumes and being ridiculous. And and Tonal's, Trojan horsing with the technology. It's like we're sneaking in all this serious fitness, but through this platform of like, look how easy this is to use. And so I think it's great. I mean, we need something to help the medicine go down, right? Not all of us are driven by can't wait to work out. So people who are in the category that I'm in, which is like never really looking forward to working out, you need something to help the medicine go down. And so the fact that it's easy to use is so smart. But let's pivot, because there's a few specific things I know that you are really just world class at, and I want to pick your brain so we can share some of that wisdom with our listeners. And the first one is actually, is directly related to your experience at Tonal. Is one of the things I've seen you just get better and better and better at over the years is being on camera. And a lot of our listeners, gym owners, trainers who listen to this podcast, more and more over the last, decade, let's say, they're being forced to create video content
Yeah.
sometimes, and they don't want to be on camera. They don't know how to be on camera. They don't know how to speak directly to the lens. They don't know what it takes to like be a compelling figure on someone's phone. And it's something you have to do every day now. And you're talking to, sometimes hundreds, I don't know, thousands of people that you just don't get to see. And
Yeah.
so it's really, I want to talk a little bit about that. So before we get into being on camera, can you just talk a little bit about before you have to be on camera, what do you do to prep? Whether this is you making, an Instagram video or it's you being on camera at Tonal, talk a little bit about what happens before the camera even turns on.
Yeah, yeah, I love this. I think this can bleed into more later, but I always think about this from two perspectives. There is
Hmm.
a mechanical piece to all this, right? So there's the
Yep.
actual like hard technical skills. Where are my eyes? What are my facial expressions doing? How am I stringing my words together? So there's the mechanical piece, and then there's the energetic piece, right? The
Hmm.
energy is regardless of what's being said, what's the energy that the person on the other end of the camera is receiving from me? And
Hmm.
what's the to I know some people might hear this and be like, oh, that's so like woo woo, quote unquote woo woo. But I like, to me, it really is an art. Being on camera is an art of being like, what's the energy that I'm feeling? What's kind of, how am I tapping into the life force around me? And then how do I deliver that? How do I make it so that the person on the receiving end is experiencing the same jolt of energy that I have right now? So if there's like a topic that really lights me up, let's say, for example, let's say I'm doing an Instagram story about on a Monday about how you may have quote unquote messed up your diet over the weekend. I've worked with so many clients like this that on Monday they're like, you know what? Fuck it. Like, and just like go off the rails because I messed it up on Saturday, right? So before
Yep.
I even get to the mechanics piece of like, what words am I saying? What are the quick bullets I want to hit? I first want to think about what's the energetic piece that if I'm talking to this person in real life, well, how are they feeling right now? They're probably feeling a little demoralized. They're probably
Hmm.
feeling like they have betrayed themselves. They're probably feeling like, I've like done all this work throughout the week and I just blew it, right? So my first job, I think this is the mistake that, and this is not a dig at all, because I have so much respect for fitness professionals who are willing to up level their skill set and push the boundaries of their comfort zone, including making content now. So this is not a dig at all. To me, it's more of an assessment. I
Hmm.
think the biggest thing that people get wrong is they jump right to the mechanics. Is what I'm saying right? And I didn't say it, look at the camera, whatever. But they're missing the energetic piece. And the energy that you come to the conversation with is what will help you seamlessly string the mechanics together, right? So let's say I'm creating this content for someone who just blew their nutrition over the weekend. I first need to understand what's going on in that person's brain right now. What is their world like at the moment? They have a new week coming up ahead of them. They probably have family responsibilities, they have work responsibilities. They're probably already overwhelmed there. And this nutrition thing just added a piece of overwhelm to their already overwhelming life. So if I'm
Yeah.
talking to that person in person, what energy am I bringing to that conversation, right? The words that come to me right now, just as I'm talking through this, are safety,
Hmm.
groundedness, forgiveness, right? Self compassion. And I know a lot of people will listen to that and be like, that's so soft. That's not like, get it together. If you wanted it badly enough, you would do it already. But the reality is, in order for us to get to that point, we have to meet the person where they are currently. There's like a level of acceptance that needs to be there, right? So that's what I would say is like step one is
Yeah.
who is who is your audience, and what's going on in their brain that is wanting you to deliver this message. If you can get that right, then that
Yeah.
sets the stage for nailing the mechanics down better and better through practice.
Yeah. Well said, my friend. I think that's really beautiful. And, I think your step one has a few components that I heard I want to repeat back for our listeners. One is you started by deciding there's a problem I think my audience has that I want to help them address. Right. So you first identify the problem or the issue or opportunity, however you want to define it, is that many of my clients that are in my audience have the feeling that they blew their nutrition over the weekend by eating a whole pizza, right? Or whatever their favorite one is. So I'm going to figure out what the issue is I want to help them with. Then I'm going to ask myself, how are they likely to feel if they're dealing with that issue or opportunity? And how do I meet them where they're at? How do I empathize with them to put myself in their shoes and think, what might they be feeling right now? And how can I meet them with an appropriate amount of energy? And I think your hypothesis is so true. Is that if you can find that space for yourself to say, okay, I need to actually lean in with a kind of a grounded energy and tone, then the mechanics you're going to talk about next will be easier to follow. Did I hear you right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
not to say that the mechanics just like magically fall into place. I think there's
Of
an art
course.
there as well.
It just gets
But I
easier.
think
It gets easier.
it's so much easier. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that, to say this just for people who are like, oh, that's so heavy or that's so woo woo, is this also applies to positive things, right? Because sometimes
Totally.
you're going to make content about the fact that over the weekend, they made time to go on that 3-hour walk they've been wanting to go
Yeah.
to, right? And you want to celebrate the fact that, you did something for yourself and you're going to meet them at a high level, energetic cheerleading energy, right? So
Yeah.
this is not all therapy. Right?
Exactly. And I
Right.
think
This happens at multiple levels.
right. I love that you brought that up because I think especially on social media, right? We both know that social media is a place that severely lacks nuance. And I think like somebody can hear this and be like, oh, well, like my job's not a therapist. Like my job is to train people. And exactly to your point, this happens at every level. So I'm doing this exact same thought process, let's say to an Instagram story, talk directly to camera on a Monday after the weekend. I am following this exact same process when I'm about to teach an hour-long advanced class on tonal. I'm going through the exact same thing. What is their mindset like? They're probably, this person's been training for 5+ years, so this is a routine to them. Maybe they're amped. Maybe they're not amped, but a little push can get them there. And then what do they need? They need intensity, right? They need to see this same thing that they've been doing for years on end with new eyes. How can I help deliver that? So this is really happening at all levels and to any situation. Really.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, let's transition to some of the mechanics. So, how do you think about planning through what's going to actually happen in terms of the technology, where the camera is, maybe lighting, maybe sound, all what words come out of your mouth. So talk a little bit about that part.
Yeah. So one thing that I actually started to do recently, actually very recent, as in like the last week, I got this idea from, I can't remember this, but it's basically from the world of scripting, right? So like actors who have, for anyone who knows or who doesn't know, my acting career peaked in high school. I haven't done any acting since then, but I do remember the process of going through a script and kind of annotating it, right? You're like highlighting your lines and then maybe you're underlining. There's like a jolt in energy here. There's anger here. There's like, and you kind of annotate it in the way that makes the most sense to you. I don't do this like actually like print out like we have an Excel sheet that we use for each class. It kind of guides, it gives us the high level summary. But what I've been doing is like, and I'll either do this on a notepad or sometimes if I'm really pressed on time, I might even just do it in my head on the train or like on the way to the studio. Is I'll start to our point that we just covered, right, with the energetic and mechanic piece and like how the energy is what shapes the mechanics. I will go through the energy arc of the class and just start to frame, okay, warm up, this is the energy, right? And then it's like taking them, let's say I'm going through a workout with 3 blocks. So to any trainers listening at Tonal, blocks are basically like a superset or so it's like the A set, the B set, right? So like there's B1, B2, it's like the pairings or groupings of exercises. So let's say in the course of my workout, there's a warm up, there's block 1, block 2, block 3, and then a cool down. So I'm just visualizing before I even bring the mechanics to it. I'm visualizing what's the energy arc of this. If I'm telling a story and to deliver an experience through this class, what's the energy I'm taking them through from moment to moment? So warm up might be, okay, this is where this person's at. They might be groggy. It might be 6 a.m., whatever. After that, cool. Block 1, we're starting to gradually ramp it up. We're introducing characters in this story, right? Here's the first move that we're doing, blah, blah, blah. Block 2, you're already sweaty, so now we're ramping that up more. Block 3 is kind of the climax of the whole story. It's really uncomfortable. You are in the thick of like, damn, like I hate this, right? Or I'm feeling really challenged.
It's the battle scene. Yeah.
It's the battle scene. It's a battle scene, right? So it's like, what energy does that require? And then after that is the cool down. It's like, okay, battle scene's done, right? So this is, I think, in real time, like how the energy kind of shapes the mechanics. Now, once I have that, that then frames what I do with my words. So let's say the warm up, right? Someone's groggy. It's like kind of the intro scene of a movie. You're kind of just slowly starting to see the pieces come together. You're like, who's this character? Why are we in this scene? Why is it showing some mountains right now? I'm just being very gentle with my words. I'm just explicitly introducing things. Hey, right now we're going to move into a half kneeling thing. Here's what I want you to think of. Boom, boom, boom. Here's what you're feeling. Breathe through it, in through your nose, out through your mouth, right? Contrast that
Well,
with...
I'll just jump in to say, even as you pretended to talk through this, you spoke quieter and more slowly and articulated your words a little bit more, right? There's
Yeah,
there's a performance to it that I think is really
absolutely.
valuable, and you embody it even as you talk about it. And for those
Oh,
of you who can't or aren't watching on video, he also started to be more gestural and more specific with his hands.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so, you do it even when you talk about it. So keep going.
Oh, wow. That was very meta. I didn't even know I was doing that, but I love it. But it just goes to show, I think that's a perfect example. It just goes to show that, like, it is like an energy thing through and through, right? Like even in the act of describing it, I'm feeling it in my body, right? So I think that's
Hmm.
the thing that a lot of people miss. Now let's contrast the warm up with what I think is probably in this example, the most opposite of it, which is block 3, right? So now I'm
Hmm.
thinking, all right, like how's this person feeling? They are probably at this point not overwhelmed, right? If we backed it up before they started the workout, they might see block 3 and be like, oh hell no, oh hell, what the
Hmm.
like, oh hell no, there's no way I could do that. And that represents a difference in their physiology in that moment of time. But by the time they're in block 3, if I did my job well and built that up over the prior stages, warm up, block 1, block 2, their physiology should be primed for them to see the same challenge, but with new eyes now. And they might see
Hmm.
it instead of like, oh, hell no. They might see it as a, oh, bring it. Like, I will take
Yeah.
this on. Like, this is like, the energy is kind of like, you're in a video game and you're fighting the final boss. It's like, okay,
Hmm.
I've practiced some skills. I'm about to put myself to the test. Let's fucking go. It's right. It's like a very let's fucking go energy. So my tone of voice
Yeah.
is going to reflect that. Even my cueing, opposite of the warm up, right? If the warm up is where I'm being more descriptive and gentle and slow, this I'm being concise. I actually don't want you thinking about my words that much. I might
Hmm.
actually even explicitly say, "Hey, this is a shut up and go set." You know what I mean? Like here's pick your focus. I'm focusing on my connection to the ground as this burn is going to overwhelm my body right now. My heart rate might be through the roof. My breathing rate might be through the roof. This burn is like at a 12 out of 10, but I'm finding my anchor point and that's it. We're fucking going. That's it. Right.
Yeah.
And then that energy shapes, like, I might say, I might not even cue that much in that set other than to say, come on, Tonal, are you still with me? Let's go. Let's go. Exhale,
Yeah.
stay with your breath, right? And so you kind of like we said back at the beginning, you meet them where they're at. So I think that's a high level example of like how you start with energy. Where's the person at? What do they need in that moment? And then that
Hmm.
informs the shit. What kind of words I choose? How lengthy is it? What's the conciseness, or like, is it delivered with a punch or with a whisper? So
Yeah.
that's kind of
Yeah.
like start to finish my process.
Yeah, well, I love you sharing this so much. There's so many things that are so applicable because I think that same process applies to a 30-second Instagram video, or like a 10-minute YouTube video, or live classes that people are actually teaching in their gym sometimes these days, right? Or
Mhm.
I mean, on camera classes, even live classes, the same
Yeah.
energy applies. So I think it's so smart. And the other thing that I really love about it is that you're focusing on the big picture arc of the energy, and what I'm hearing, kind of inherent in what you're sharing, is that you kind of trust that the content will be there, right? You trust that, like, I know good coaching cues. I
Yep.
know the exercises that I've planned for us to do. I know, even when we talk about the Instagram story, I know the content I'm going to deliver, the questions I'm
Mhm.
going to ask. I don't have to think about that so much. I have
Yeah.
to really think more big picture about the energy I'm bringing, the experience I'm creating. If I can follow that arc, the content will be there. There's kind of a trust that I'm hearing in what you do. Is that accurate?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think to your point of developing trust, I talk about this a lot in my own coaching. I talk about the concept of self-trust. Honestly, it's one of my core messages. I say it so much and I'm like, do people get sick of this? But it's social media and I do believe in it, so I just keep talking about it. But like,
Yeah.
if we just talk about trust in a different realm, right? So like
Mhm.
me developing self-trust with myself,
Mhm.
It's developed through this intentional process of putting in reps over and over and over again, that when push comes to shove, if I'm thrown into the game, now I can look at the challenge around me and have this sense of like, okay, I've been put through the ringer in my practices. Like, I can do this. I can do this. And I can
Hmm.
trust my body to intuit how to respond in each moment as chaos is happening around me in real time.
Yeah.
So part of that preparation, like I think this could even be a good exercise at a micro level. Let's say for anyone who is about to do a talk to camera video on Instagram, right? Because that's an easy one for your audience, like gym owner who's making content for
Yep.
an ideal client, right? And you're trying to, the goal is, how can I show this ideal client that I have some tangible value, that if they take this action or they listen to this 30-second, however long the reel is or the story is, if they just listen to this 30-second video and take the one bite-sized piece of action that I convey in this video, that they'll get a win right now, like tangible,
Yep.
right? So that's the goal. So a quick exercise might be like literally open up your note before you even open up your camera. Just do a very, and you could set a timer on this so that it doesn't seem burdensome or overwhelming. Literally set like a 3-minute timer, 5-minute timer, however long feels most manageable for you, and be like, who am I speaking to? Like 3 questions. Who am I
Yep.
speaking to? What are they feeling right now? And what do they need to hear? Right. And spend 3 minutes, just quick
Hmm.
bullets. It doesn't have to be like this perfectly, because it's not, you're not showing it to anyone. You're just getting your own mind in the right place. And then when you get to the what do they need to hear piece, this is where simplicity goes a long way. And I will tell you this. Oh my God, girl, you've watched my journey from social media since 2019. Like
Yeah.
you have witnessed, I was an employee at Mark Fisher Fitness when I started creating content in 2019. Simplicity was not my strong suit. And I think now, I think I've gotten way better at it, but like anything, it's always a road of continual improvement, right? But
Yeah.
when you get to that
Well,
third
because here's the thing: is you love nuance, right? And you know that
yes,
most of life happens in the gray area, and
yes,
so trying to say something like concise that lives at an extreme is like really counterintuitive to someone who loves the nuance.
right.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, I think that so many of your gym owners, right, who listen to this
Yeah.
podcast or who are in BFU, is like, we love the science so much, which I love, and I
Hmm.
never want to discourage that. But by the time you get to question 3 of like, what do they need to hear? Questions 1 and 2 are going to form, the questions 1 and 2 are the filter for how you
Hmm.
take that high level nuance and really these big buckets of information, and you distill it down to maybe 3 drops, right? It's the
Yeah.
difference between what's true, what's technically true, versus what's helpful in this moment, right? If you
Yeah.
understand questions 1 and 2 really well, you have the knowledge already, especially if you're like, you're a gym owner, you're a trainer, you've been in this industry for years, you have the knowledge already. Start applying the filter, and that simplicity, again, it's practice, but it will
Yeah.
start to come through as you go through
Yeah.
this over and over again.
Yeah, well said. I think it's a great framework, our friend. Like, who are you talking to? How are they feeling right now? What kind of energy do you meet them at? Right. And then what do they need from you right now? What do they need to hear that's both true and helpful? Right. With
Yeah.
an emphasis on the helpful.
Yeah.
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 Right. That's amazing. Can you maybe just, give an example of like a piece of content that follows that model that you've made recently, or one that was very popular that you made, so people have an example they can take away?
Yeah. Actually, do you mind if I pull? I'm like, I'm like,
Yeah. Pull out
what?
your phone.
I created
Yeah.
so much
You do it
content.
all the
Like, why
time.
am I? Oh, okay. Actually, here's one. I'm actually very proud of this one,
Yeah.
mainly because it took much longer than I had planned to edit it. But it was basically, I made this last week, and the Instagram captions was super simple. It was like, everything is fake, okay? Question mark. And it's meant to be silly. It was meant to be silly, and the reel was basically like what Instagram sees versus what my phone sees. And so like
Sure.
what Instagram sees part was like, and if you go to my Instagram page, you can find this, is like, it's all these clips of like what people would consider highlights, right? So it's me setting a back
Hmm.
squat PR. It's me doing like cool exercises. I'm like doing these jumping over hurdles, and like I'm talking to camera on tonal, and then I'm like dancing in my apartment. And then what my phone sees is like, it shows just different outtakes of my phone falling and like me trying to figure out
Yep.
placement. And so for me, and I posted that on a Friday, because I figured, I was like, Friday energy, you know what? People are not trying to be, and it's the opposite of today. Today, I posted a thread on my story of like Motivation Monday. Like, I know that today people are coming off of the weekend. They just had like, maybe there's a little bit of melancholy going into the week. So how can I help people frame their mind around that? Versus on a Friday, you're ready. You've just like endured this week. You're ready to go into the weekend. So first off, I'm like, this is where my person's at. Let me meet them with some light, silly energy. And then I thought about, okay, what's a thing that one would like be super just fucking funny, quite frankly. And then two would help, because it is a part of my core philosophy, is to help dissipate a lot of shame around not getting things right, not getting things perfectly. And that's my whole brand, right? Is like showing up imperfectly, but relentlessly. So I was like, oh my God, like, let's do that now. And this is where the mechanics came together. And I'll give credit. I said this in the Instagram caption too. I credited another trainer who made a video that I inspired. Her name's Corinne Pierce. Phenomenal video. I cracked up when I saw it. So I messaged her. I was like, hey, I'm going to steal this. This is so good. And so to me, that was an example of like, here's a message I want to deliver to people, that yes, be proud of what you've done, but also your imperfections aren't the end of the world. And I need to Trojan horse that message in a way that meets you right where you're at, which is that it's a Friday afternoon. So now I can take all that and put the mechanics together to seamlessly deliver this gift to the world, right? I took footage, I edited it in a certain way, chose the song, and I made the caption. The caption was specifically, it was the opposite of my usual nuance, like Technique Tuesday, which might be like, here's da 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 da, right? This one was like, everything's fake, okay? And it was just like, and it was clearly like, okay, clearly I did these things for real, but also it's kind of this poking fun at social media. So that's just an example for me of like how I took that whole process and put it in a piece of content.
It makes sense, and I think it tracks so beautifully to the three steps you gave, right? So just thinking about, where are my people at on a Friday? They had a long week. They're going into a weekend. They need something lighthearted to make them laugh and to entertain them. And the thing that it was like, we're not all perfect. Let me make fun of myself. That'll help you let yourself off the hook, right? I do this for a living, and I mess the shit up all the time.
Yeah.
And so you can also be a little bit messy, and that's okay. And to be able to deliver that succinctly in a quick little video is fantastic, because not all content needs to be record-breaking, groundbreaking, insightful information. Some of it can be just entertaining with a little bit of a takeaway. And so that's a beautiful example of one that really speaks to your audience, probably got a lot of traction, and really got them to know, like, and trust you more, which is kind of why we do this.
Exactly.
There's also this kind of like theme in your approach here, this kind of Trojan horse theme, which is give them what they need in a package of what they want. Of like, you're kind of sneaking in, here's the vegetables you need to eat, but I'm going to sneak it in this package of something more tasty. So I think it's also a great takeaway for our listeners of trying to balance those two things. Let me do this. I know we're close to time, but I'm going to go a little long, if that's okay with you, if you have a few more minutes. Yeah, because I want to cover, we can keep talking about being on camera, but I think you've already given such a beautiful framework that I kind of want to pivot a little bit and ask about something else I know you're brilliant at, which is you're so good at cueing. Right. This is a skill that trainers, take years to develop. I know many of our listeners, even if you've been training for a long time, are maybe not the most confident at, cueing during workouts. And you, I know, do this in a way, because I've seen you do it at MFF, I've seen you do it on social media, is you're really good at having a very varied approach to your cueing. Not only are you abiding by the kind of energy arc we've just talked about, but you're also good at providing a series of like internal cues that ask people to kind of go in their body and think about their physical experience, external cues about the world around them. And so I wanted to see if there's anything, and this is a big topic, it could be a whole nother podcast, but is there anything about, that you can share in a few minutes that gives people a little insight to your approach to really great coaching cues?
Yeah, I think exactly. I mean, it's really on brand with everything we've covered so far, which is what's the big picture? What's the context of what you want them to accomplish, right? And this is gonna sound like such a cop out. I would literally take it through the exact same three questions, right? Because let's just say I'm coaching a beginner class on tonal, right? So who am I speaking to? Where are they at? And what do they need to hear, right? I could do that at both a macro and a micro level, but when I'm going through, let's just say a goblet squat, right? Very basic exercise for all your listeners here. This is a basic exercise to us, but it's like, it's credit to MFF. I learned this so well at MFF. It's like, all right, here's someone who maybe hated gym class. Like maybe they literally got harassed in gym class, right? So now what words am I going to use? And when we come down to the cueing, I might be a little bit more internal, because if I'm, and this is super high level, but if someone got harassed in gym class, they might not have a very safe association in their body with an exercise, right? They might start to feel a burn in their legs, and without being able to explain with words what's going on, they like maybe memories are coming back, or maybe a certain emotion, right? Like a certain like pit in their stomach. And so what I want to do is like start to create some safety using my words while still giving them the technical delivery that I want. So let's say from a technical perspective, one of the things that we know is like if you're doing a squat or a deadlift or whatever, if your foot position is not in place, if you are not grounded to, if you can't feel your connection to the floor, it does not matter if I cue your abs or your glutes or whatever, all these other things, it will not come together. So I look at that and be like, all right, what's the one thing? Because remember, I have a beginner who this is new, is uncomfortable. They've had terrible experiences with this in the past. They're probably overwhelmed right now. So if I were to look at this whole long list of technical things, my framework here is kind of like, what's the one thing? What's the one thing? Because I don't want to overwhelm them further. What's the one thing that if I chose that, would A, set the foundation for everything else, and B, start to knock out other things as a byproduct of it, right? I kind of choose what my quote unquote big rock is. And then the delivery of that big rock is informed by the energy that I want to meet that person with. So let's go back to this beginner doing a goblet squat. Now I might look at this and be like, if this was in person, I might even ask them a question after the first time. I might let them do a full set without interruptions. Maybe I'll give them like a few affirmations as they're going through the set, just so they're not like clueless of like, am I doing this wrong? Am I doing this right? Sure. I might give them a few affirmations, and then maybe after the first set, our rest period is spent just talking about it. I'm like, how did that feel? Where'd you feel? Right? I'm really approaching it with this energy of curiosity. Like, what was your internal experience like? I can then take what they say and use that to inform, right? So the word we love using this podcast, to then inform the Trojan horse that I build, right? Let's say they felt XYZ thing. Now I can take the thing that I know will make a difference, which is the big rock, your foot positioning, and I can frame it in a way of, okay, yeah, totally hear you. Your low back was blah, blah, blah. Can you experiment with something? What would happen in this second set if you just thought of pressing in your big toe and your heel a little bit more in each foot? Can you play with that? Right? And then the delivery is a little bit more open-ended exploration for this person, instead of, oh my God, if I don't get this outcome, I failed. Right? So that's one example. And we could do the exact same thing for an advanced user. Let's say someone is let's say they've been trained coming to my gym for like 8 years, right? And they're super experienced at this point. Their movement's super proficient. They know how to push themselves to a threshold, almost to a fault, where it's like your job as a coach is almost to reel them back sometimes. Sure. It could be the same thing. Maybe I'm giving them a pep talk before they go into their final set. I might be less technical with it. I might be more inspirational and more motivational with it. And if I'm thinking of, all right, who are they? Where are they at right now? What are they feeling? I can think back to myself about my own inputs. I think a lot of this really does come down to being familiar with yourself, and like you having yourself as a source of like empathy that you can pull from. If I'm like, all right, anytime that I've been in this situation, what has really helped me? And I can say for myself that whenever I've been like in a situation in my life or in fitness where I've quote unquote been pushed against a corner, I know some of the things that I'm like, okay, I know that I have the power to choose my perception in this situation. I know that I am really scared right now, but if I can shift the way that I see the situation, I can dig a little deeper, right? And so I can use that to then inform, yeah, we're not going to use technical cues right now. I might give you a brief 15-second anecdote that sparks something inside of you that gets you to see the challenge a little differently. And now you can show up differently in the middle of this really grueling set. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful example, and you illustrated so well how, your earlier framework of like, who is this person? What are you helping them with? What do they need right now? It really applies to coaching as well, and coaching queuing, right? Because beginner person does need someone who's going to be a little technical, focus on just one thing, create a psychologically safe space for you to try and
Mhm.
fail, and maybe feel a little silly, maybe even look a little silly,
Yeah.
and make that okay. Where someone who's been around for a long time, they need motivation to hit a PR, to do
Yeah.
something they've never done before. They need to be pushed to keep going. And so you can use a very different approach.
Yeah.
And it comes with, your ability to really read a room and meet someone where they're at. Right. And
Yeah.
that's a thing that, to your point at the beginning of this conversation, it just takes a lot of reps, right? It takes a
Mhm.
lot of time in the room with people to learn how to be as skilled as you've become at this. But I think it's a great framework for people to use. So yeah, bravo, my friend. Um,
Thank you.
I could keep going, but I'm going to be disciplined and start to wrap us up. I'm going to wrap us up.
You and I are the
I have
same.
so
You and
many.
I are the
I
same.
know I have so many. I want to keep going, and this is so valuable. I'll have to just have you back on the podcast. We'll have you back at some point, and we'll talk about a bunch of other things, or keep going on queuing. This was so valuable. Well, one last question. I'll try and make it a quick one. Is how do you keep leveling up? Right, because you're a coach who has a lot of experience. You've worked a lot of places. Now you have this experience working for Tonal, which I'm sure is a whole bunch of skill sets you've learned for the first time. And a lot of our listeners in the coaching realm are constantly trying to level up. And the typical ways are like getting other certs and, going to workshops and conferences, which all are useful. But I'm
Yeah.
just curious, what is your go-to way to keep leveling up as a trainer for yourself?
Yeah. Without making this too formulaic, because I know I just gave you a framework, I think really I could distill it down to this, where like this has started happening more intuitively for me, where like every
Mm-hmm.
quarter I'll find myself kind of quote unquote like running into a wall and then just having
Sure.
to have a moment of reflection. I remember at the beginning of starting my online business, it was every quarter we would like vision out like what's happening this quarter, what needs to happen. I think at this point it kind of happens a little intuitively, but I do start with honestly just a lot of reflection of like
Yep.
what's going well, what's not going well, right? They're not like mind-blowing things, but really sitting with, okay, like what am I bringing to the table that is causing this spark? How can I keep doing more of that, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
can give personal examples for myself. I know one of my strengths and skill sets is like being able to take high level concepts that might be intimidating to people and then distill it in a way that is both understandable and enjoyable for people, right?
Yep.
And so if I know that, then I can spend time. Let's say I'm going into, right, we're about to go into Q2 of 2023. I can spend
Mm-hmm.
time being like, all right, how can I make more space, literally space in my day to keep up leveling this specific skill set? Am I learning more things? What's a topic that's really making me come alive? What inputs am I really drawn towards right now? Are they movies? Are they books? Are they maybe a mix of all these things? And how can I use that to organically synthesize these new insights that I can put into the world? So that's one. And then the flip side is, what's my biggest gap right now? What's my biggest gap? So right now, I'm working with a coach, not a fitness coach. I think this would be more considered in the realm of like life coaching. I have
Mm-hmm.
noticed some of my biggest gaps in this season, like in this quarter, have actually been very internal based, very like mindset based, how I see myself based. And so if I'm clear on like, all right, this is the thing that's driving the highest ROI right now. Let me keep doubling
Mm-hmm.
down on that. And here's my biggest limiter. How can I raise that ceiling or raise that floor, whatever verbiage we want to use?
Yeah.
I just come back to the feeling of, to the concept of overwhelm, right? At any given moment, there's a billion things we could keep doing or
Yeah.
choose to do and be paralyzed by decision fatigue. But if I can think of those two things, I think it can really provide a lot of clarity and direction and be like, look, you can still live your life, still have a lot of energy for the things you like to do. Just decide and discern what are the essential things right now.
Yeah, beautifully said. I love that paradigm, right? Just keep doubling down on the strengths, keep pushing on the things you know are having a great ROI, and then really understand what your gaps are so you can start to raise that floor or ceiling, right? And to have the minimum be raised. So bravo. I think that's really succinct and fantastic. Yeah, let's leave it there, my friend. This was so valuable. I really appreciate your time. We covered so much ground from, from your model for how to create great content and be on camera to your philosophy on great training cues to even just the last thing you shared is so valuable for our listeners. So thank you for this. How do
Right.
people, if they want more Tim Landicho in their life, where do they find you on the interwebs? How can they connect with you if they want to work with you? What's your deets?
Yeah, the deets are my Instagram is Tim Landicho, so just first and last name. And then for anyone who's curious about so anyone who has a tonal can find all of my on tonal content there. So any workouts I lead, programs that I build, etc., are all on there. I'm working on. I technically do have a TikTok, but nothing's up there. Nothing's up here yet. Yeah, because the Gen Z folks are a little intimidating to me. But
Yes.
I do have a TikTok. It's the same as Instagram. Good times. Maybe I'll get something up there this year.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Well, listeners, please go follow Tim. I mean, not only are you creating great content, but you're just a great force in this industry who's doing so much great work. You lead with such great integrity, and you're always sharing your knowledge and wisdom, which I think is such a valuable thing. You create this spirit of generosity with everyone around you. So thank you for doing that again today on this podcast. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much for having this. Is such an honor. And I love this conversation with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Listeners, if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. Email me, michael@businessfeedercorns.com. Let me know what you want me to talk about next and who you want me to talk to. And thanks again for a great conversation. Bye, Tim.